video, I want to discuss some of the interview tips if you decide to do a temporary resident permit application at the port of entry. The first tip is obviously to ensure that you bring documentation so the officer knows what he or she's dealing with so they can ask the appropriate questions. So include documents about the offense, what you've completed, what your reason for travels are, etc. The officer will obviously ask about questions about how the offense happened. Your job is to focus on the future, which means do not focus about necessarily how the offense happened, but more about what you've learned since that offense, and that's very important. So whenever the officer asks about questions about your offense, focus on what you have learned from that offense. The other thing that you want to understand is keep your answers short and simple. Listen carefully to the immigration officer's question and just answer the question. Don't just go on and on and on about explaining everything that you know to the officer if the officer simply asks, why are you here at the port of entry? So keep your answers very short, specific, and listen to the actual question. A lot of errors happen when the client obviously gets a little bit nervous and says too much. So again, I repeat, listen carefully to the question, take a deep breath, and just answer the question. Don't feel the need that you have to tell this officer a whole story. The other thing you want to focus on when you're answering these questions is about remorse, regret, and growth. What I mean by that is the officer, in order for them to allow your entry into Canada, they're looking at assessing you what they call the risk versus need. The risk to possible Canadians and the need of your travel. In order for the officer to issue a temporary resident permit, your need to travel needs to outweigh the possible risk. So when you're answering these questions, make sure you demonstrate remorse, growth, and regret. An example would be to say, I've learned a lot from this experience. I have a daughter that looks up to me. I regret the decision of that day, etc., etc. So you definitely want to mention that. You can also mention some of your accomplishments since that offense. Perhaps you got a promotion at your new job, etc. The other last thing that I want to state is a leisure versus business trip. Now, when you go to the port of entry, again, like I said, the officer has to assess the risk versus need. A lot of times clients ask me, well, my trip is for leisure, I'm going fishing or I'm going hunting. This is fine. It doesn't mean that the officer will not allow you entry just because your trip is leisure. However, in order to answer the question, should you travel to the port of entry on a leisure trip, we would require a little bit more. I need to know, for example, how long ago the offense happened, how many offenses are we talking about, and so forth. So it's not a simple answer about should you travel on a leisure trip when you have a criminal inadmissibility. Technically, legally, you are able to do so, but it all depends on other factors as well. So if you're looking at making a trip, whether it be business or leisure, give us a call today and let us make sure that you go with a strong application to the port of entry. Thank you, and until next time.